better episode than those first 30 seconds or so. Didn't even bring my mic over to talk to you guys. But thank you all for tuning in to get started here today. And what we're going to do on this episode is dive into the full Wednesday college basketball slate and break it down from a gambling aspect because the last couple of weeks, quite frankly, the weekday games have not been super exciting. We haven't had a whole lot to talk about in terms of live college basketball the last couple of weeks because of finals, teams getting ready for the holidays, etc. But there's a lot going on this evening, and there are a lot of games to get into, and we are going to do so today. And as always, make sure you are following me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR so you get my gambling picks every day coming off of a 4-2 night last night, which brings me to, let's see here, I am now 101 and 74 on the college basketball season to this point. I'm hopefully going to continue that with a winning night tonight. So certainly things have been going well for my gambling picks. And again, you can follow those every day at BRamseyKSR on Twitter. Obviously, here on the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show YouTube channel is where you can find these all fired up episodes with me every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time live on the channel. So make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Leave it a like if you are watching right now. You can dive into the comment section in the chat, and I will answer those questions live. Or if you're watching this sometime down the road, you can obviously leave a comment or hit me up on Twitter, and we will talk about some college hoops there as well. And then every Monday and Friday morning, I have the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show podcasts up on Spotify or wherever you do listen to your podcast episodes. But enough of the housekeeping notes. It is time to dive into tonight's college basketball slate. I've got my FanDuel Sportsbook app pulled up here on my phone so we can go through some of the most recent lines and the games worth talking about. If there's a game, I'm going to touch on a lot of the big games, the games that I have a particular interest in this evening, and probably touch on 8 to 10 or 12 total games. But if there's something that you specifically want to hear about, drop it in the chat. I will get to those all as well if you have anything specific. Or again, if you're watching this before the game start later this evening and you want to hit me up on Twitter at BRamseyKSR, I'm happy to answer any questions at any time as it comes to your gambling needs. But I'm just going to run down the list here. And the first game of note starting at 7 p.m. this evening is Duke against Baylor. This is on a neutral floor. Let's see, where are they playing that game at? This one, oh, it's at MSG tonight. Okay. So Duke and Baylor are tipping off this evening at 7 o'clock at Madison Square Garden. Duke is currently a 2.5-point favorite on the FanDuel Sportsbook. The over-under is sitting at 154.5. And that's what I want to talk about in this one. You have two top 10 offenses per KenPom here between the Blue Devils and the Baylor Bears. So immediately you start to think about the over. And there's a few different things at play here. When you look at Duke's last couple games, they seem to, admittedly against lesser competition, but they've hit a stride, scoring 80 and 89 points in their recent wins against Charlotte and Hofstra, though they did struggle a little bit in the two games prior to that. Their ACC loss at Georgia Tech to begin ACC play, and then their loss to Arkansas as well. But again, a top 10 offense. The Blue Devils have shot it pretty well from three-point range this season. They're excellent at taking care of the ball. That's a big thing when looking at overs. You certainly want teams that aren't going to turn the ball over a ton, and the Blue Devils do an excellent job of getting a shot every time down the floor. That helps them be incredibly efficient. As for Baylor, they are even more potent offensively. They're the best three-point shooting team in the country at this point, shooting 44.6% from three-point range, led by their dynamic guard play. Ray J. Dennis is their point guard, who's been excellent, transferring over from Toledo. They've got Jacoby Walter, who's arguably been the best freshman in the country this season. Jaden Nunn certainly helps as well. And then you have Langston Love coming off of the bench to provide some even more firepower. Then guys like Jalen Bridges and Yves Messi in the front court as well. So plenty of firepower to go around. Kyle Filipowski is certainly the story for Duke. The over jumped out to me right away. I was able to get in at 153.5, as I said on on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's currently sitting at 154.5. But I think when you get two of the best offenses in college basketball together, you have to lean towards the over. And I am certainly not the person. And those of you that know me, some of my friends certainly would know. Like, I, I've never been the one who's like, well, I'm watching the game, I want to root for points, I want to bet the over. I've never fully understood that. I mean, sure, it's fun to see a high scoring game. We all like that. I mean, heck, I sat here and watched the Florida Michigan game last night go to double overtime, 101-96 or whatever in the heck that ended up being, and that was a lot of fun. But to me, that there's actually something comforting about betting unders. And again, my friends always laugh at me at this, but I always say I would rather be winning until I lose than losing until I win. And that's the way I look at sometimes betting overs and unders. Like, I've never understood loving the over so much, because you might never get there, but even if you do, you're kind of sweating it out until the 36th, 37th minute. Whereas that under, you kind of have the safety blanket of I'm winning this entire, like, I'm winning for 36 or 37 minutes until maybe I ultimately lose it. Anyway, that's a weird psychology piece to gambling that probably is not even a good thing to think about, honestly. But just a sidebar here on All Fired Up, something I can get all fired up about a little bit. But as I said, I like the over in this game. Again, I got in at 153.5. The line now on the FanDuel Sportsbook app is 154.5. But I think this is a game to me that's going to be played in the 80s. So you get to 160, pretty comfortably at that point. And so something I always do, and again, this has led to me being 101-74 or whatever I said. Yeah, 101-74 so far this season of my gambling picks. I go through the games, and then I'm mentally kind of thinking about what my line would be for the game. And then if there's one that stands out, if there's something that I like, I then go to KenPom and consult with what they have the game ending up as. And sometimes I'll certainly go rogue and I'll take it myself if KenPom doesn't necessarily lean the same way I do or isn't as in strong a favor. But if I get some validation from KenPom, then I'm always going to lock in that bet. And this is one that fit that criteria. I saw that number at 153.5, and I thought, okay, I feel like this Duke Baylor game is going to go over that number. I'm thinking something closer to 160 in my head. I go to KenPom. They have the game being 80-79, actually in favor of Baylor, the underdog, in this one. So 80-79 is 159 points. I had it at around 160. The line, 153.5 or 154.5, wherever you can get it at. So that leaves us, 5-6 points of cushion there between what I thought, what KenPom thought, and what the actual line is. So that is why I am getting on. As I said, 153.5 is my number. 154.5 is the current number for that Baylor Duke game this evening. And I think two top 10 offenses, you're going to want to take the over in that game. Hard to say. If you're looking at a side here, you have to think that Baylor's going to bounce back from just their atrocious performance against Michigan State, scoring 64 points. They got beat by 24 against the Spartans, who have struggled. So you have to think that they're going to bounce back in this one. Does that mean they win? I don't know. I sure as heck hope it means they score more for the bet that we're taking here. But I love the backcourt of this Baylor team. I think that they certainly have the better backcourt, but they don't have Kyle Filipowski. Now, do I think that Missy can match up with him some? Yes. Do I think that you can throw Jalen Bridges even at Filipowski some and guard him? Yes. But if I had to pick a side, honestly, I might lean towards Baylor in a bounce back spot. But again, I'm locking in the over 153.5 for this game. The next one, scrolling through the FanDuel Sportsbook app here, you have a Big East matchup between St. John's and Xavier. This one is at St. John's. They're in New York. So you have some big time basketball, but they're being played tonight at Madison Square Garden. And then also here in at St. John's Arena there, and I guess technically, what is it? Jamaica or whatever, Jamaica, New York. But let's see. St. John's is a 5.5 point favorite over the Musketeers of Xavier. This over under is at 157.5 points. And I think this is a game to me that just screams stay away from it with probably a 10-foot pole if you can, because you just never know to some extent what you're getting out of St. John's, but you definitely don't know what in the heck you're getting out of Xavier this season. They have a very odd resume getting themselves to 6-5 on the season. They have losses to Purdue and Washington early on, but they beat Cincinnati in the crosstown shootout. Then they have losses to Oakland and Delaware, but they played Houston tough. They played Purdue pretty tough. So you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. You know you're going to be playing at a pretty fast pace. That's why this total is so high. And St. John's speeds people up a little bit as well, certainly. But neither one of these teams shoot the ball excellent from 3-point range. St. John's isn't bad percentage wise, but they're very low volume. Xavier's extremely low volume and not that good percentage wise. Neither team is very good from the free throw line. So that's something I look at when thinking over under. So I don't really want any part of the over here, but this is not a game I'd want to bet the under in either. Generally at home, I'm going to ride with home favorites in conference play. But there's something about the Xavier team I think that's just dangerous enough that I don't want any part of this game. I don't have a great read on it. I mean, you certainly have the talent there for St. John's, but they've shown that they just really struggle to guard people at times this year. I mean, you look at their losses, giving up 89 to Michigan, 88 to Dayton, 86 to Boston College. I'm not sure that I can trust them on the defensive side of the ball enough to slow down the Xavier team that certainly can put up points at times this season. So no play for me on that St. John's Xavier game. I think that there's just too many unknowns still at this point. And then anytime you introduce conference play to a game, it becomes hard, I think, especially early in conference play before we get an even better read on these teams to really lock something in terms of a bet. Sticking in Big East play, you have Seton Hall coming in as an 8.5-point underdog, hosting the defending national champion UConn Huskies. This over under much lower than the first two that we talked about. This one's sitting at 140.5. To me, the big thing here is, and you're going to have competing mindsets in this game. UConn kind of just blasts everybody at this point, going back to last season's tournament run when they won the national championship. And then aside from their close loss at Kansas this year, they've beaten, let's see, it's factual to say they've beaten everybody by double figures. Yes, they won by 10 against Texas there in the Empire Classic at Madison Square Garden. They just beat Gonzaga by 13 in a game that was played in Seattle, I believe, or at least somewhere up there. They beat North Carolina on a neutral floor by 11 points. So, like, even the best teams they play, they are beating by double figures. And as I said, this line's at 8.5. So part of you kind of thinks, okay, like I'm riding with the Huskies. They once again look like one of the best teams in the country. Alex Carabin has been excellent. Tristan Newton looks like an All-American. You have Stephon Castle back, one of the better perimeter defenders for the Huskies. Rutgers transfer Cam Spencer, certainly Donovan Clingan. Like, there's just so much talent there for Coach Dan Hurley that it's hard to not roll with the defending national champions. However, something that I really never want to do is take road favorites in conference play, especially relatively large road favorites. That's just a scary proposition. Like this Seton Hall team, who certainly isn't bad, they're good defensively, they're tough, they're not able to really shoot the ball, but they can get to the basket, they can score it inside pretty well. They're coming off of an impressive win against Missouri. Kadari Richmond has been excellent for them, the former Syracuse Orange player who has been at Seton Hall now for a few years. You have Dre Davis having a good season, veteran swing man for them as well. But it's just hard for me to bet against home conference teams, especially when it's 8.5 points. Now, I wouldn't want to necessarily take Seton Hall either because I think UConn's that much better. But to me, having success gambling is about kind of developing a few credos and having some things that you live by, whether that be betting against IUPUI or what in baseball. I've had a lot of success just in the playoffs. Take the underdog in every single game. It was huge this season. Like, did very well taking the underdog every single game of the playoffs and winning. Like, obviously, are you going to get mega rich doing that? No. But compared to the casual sports bettor who, throws a 3-team parlay out there every night, having some things to hang your hat on, I think, is how you can start to develop some winning habits instead of just blindly trying to be smarter than the books in every game. And I think that looking at a game where Seton Hall is at home, getting 8.5 points, like not falling into the trap of it's like, well, UConn's way better than Seton Hall. Not falling into that trap, I think, is how you can make money long term. I'm staying away from this game and letting it ride. Seton Hall is an 8.5 point underdog against the defending national champion UConn Huskies. Scrolling through here once again, a mid-major game that people will want to watch tonight. Toledo laying 4.5 points at home against Vermont. This total is at 148.5. Two highly successful mid-major programs. Toledo, obviously in the MAC, they are 6-4, but have won 3 straight games, including some impressive wins over Oakland, Northern Iowa, and Marshall. They really don't have a bad loss this season. Lost at home to George Mason, but otherwise they were all neutral site games. A high-powered offense, 55th in KenPom, can really shoot it. Not shooting big at a high rate, but 39.5% is 17th in the country for the Rockets. But the Catamounts, always efficient offensively. They're really going to slow them down, try to control the pace. They, unlike Toledo, they shoot a ton of three-pointers, but aren't as high a percentage. Still good at 35.8%. But you have a lot of veteran talent here with the Catamounts, once again led by veteran head coach John Becker. Really hard to bet against Vermont because of the way that they control the tempo. But being on the road, hesitate for this one. I'm passing on this game as well, but certainly any fans of mid-major basketball are going to want to tune into Toledo and Vermont tonight. Another exciting one, Creighton and Villanova. Let's see, Creighton is now this was 7.5 earlier. Let me find it here. What time is this game? This game's at 9 o'clock. Okay, it's moved to Creighton minus 8.5 now. Creighton now an 8.5 point favorite against Villanova. Total sitting at 141.5. I've watched quite a bit of Villanova for whatever reason this year. I actually haven't watched a ton of Creighton. But the thing with Creighton is it's a little bit of a crapshoot in terms of what you're going to get. I mean, their 2 losses this year have been somewhat staggering on paper. Score 48 in a loss to Colorado State, score 64 in a loss to UNLV, but then they just turn around the other night and won a shootout with Alabama, 85-82. Certainly a team that can score the basketball. They're going to shoot a ton of threes. They're going to make a ton of threes, 38.7% from three-point range. Essentially half of their shots for the Blue Jays come from three-point range, one of the best offenses in college basketball, led by Trey Alexander, Baylor Shireman, certainly Ryan Kalkbrenner around the basket, helping on the defensive end as well. And then Villanova, is this the oddest resume in all of college basketball at this point? They're like the 4th best team in Philadelphia with losses to Penn, St. John's, and Drexel. But then they also have wins over Maryland, Texas Tech, North Carolina, Memphis, just recently over UCLA, which doesn't look like that great of a win anymore, but still a win against a quality power conference team. So Villanova is 7-4, 3 pretty bad losses, but 4 or 5 very quality wins. Justin Moore, Eric Dixon has really been the story of this season for them. Tyler Burton certainly gives them some firepower as well and some athleticism out on the wing. I would lean Creighton in this game. I think that Creighton still has not fully found their footing this year. They've been very, very good offensively, but it's been a little bit more hit and miss than you would expect for a team with a lot of guys coming back this year for them. So I think you're going to see a situation where now getting into Big East play, you're going to get the absolute best out of Creighton being at home. I think this one could come down to them leading by 7-8 points late, and you have a situation where free throws and trading possessions back and forth can push this one into double figures for a Creighton win. I'm not taking this one, but I would lean the Creighton minus 8.5. Like I said, it was 7.5 earlier. If you can get that 7.5 number, would really like it. Still would lean Creighton minus 8.5. Another fun one this evening, Oklahoma and North Carolina. This is the prove it game for the Sooners so far. They are 2.5 point underdogs against the Tar Heels, a total of 155.5 in this game. Oklahoma now 11-0 or 10-0, excuse me, on the season, having defeated teams like Iowa, USC, Providence, and Arkansas, but they have not played a team. Let's see. The top team they've played this season is 39th in KenPom. That was Providence back a couple weeks ago, December 5th. They defeated Providence 72-51, which after what the Friars did to not Villanova, to Marquette last night, that looks even that more impressive. But the Sooners certainly are going to need to prove some things this evening against North Carolina. This game is being played in where this one's in Charlotte at the Spectrum Center. So it's more or less a road game for Oklahoma. As I said, they are 2.5 point underdogs with a total of 155.5. KenPom has this one with North Carolina by 1. So you're getting a little bit of value there, I guess, if you take the Tar Heels. North Carolina has lost. I just spilt my water a little bit. North Carolina has lost back-to-back games now over the course of like a 20-day span. They haven't played much recently, but they lost to Kentucky, obviously, on Saturday, lost to UConn the game before that. So they're going to be hungry for a win, but the road didn't get a whole lot easier for them. To me, and I said this earlier to somebody on Twitter. Again, you can follow me at BRamseyKSR. I want to see a game like this before I bet on Oklahoma in a big-time battle. Now, I think North Carolina is the better team. I'm not fully sold on Oklahoma being this top 20 undefeated team currently. I think that their schedule has lended itself to their great start. But I do think they're really good defensively, and I think that they're going to be able to bang around with Baycott some inside with John Hughley, what he can do inside Sam Godwin as well. Out on the perimeter, you have Javion McCollum, who's been one of the surprises, or not necessarily surprises, but it's been a bright spot of college basketball this season. Shot the ball very well, excellent driver as well, has high assist rate, finishes excellent for a 6'2", very small, thin guard. So certainly watch out for him. Watching McCollum against R.J. Davis in this game will be even more fun than watching anything that Godwin and Hughley do inside with Baycott. But guys like Harrison Ingram, the extra firepower with Elliott Cadeau, Cormac Ryan got himself going from 3-point range against Kentucky. I just think there's more talent and more firepower on the North Carolina side. But as I said, the Sooners are good defensively, and I do think that that'll translate. I think they will guard people this year under Coach Porter Moser. Certainly a guy who's had good defenses in the past at Loyola, among other stops. But again, I don't want to be in a situation where we find out tonight how good Oklahoma is. So I'm gonna sit this one out. Again, if I had to go with it, I would take North Carolina minus 2.5. But I would hate to look up and like, well, okay, Oklahoma won by 7. Like, this team's legit. I don't want to be in that situation. I'd rather let this game play out, see them play a really, really good opponent, and then be ready to bet on them some in Big 12 play. The last game I have written down here, and again, make sure you join in the chat if you're watching and there's a game that you want an opinion on, to the extent that my opinion's worth anything, go ahead and drop it in the chat, and I will certainly break that game down as well. But the nightcap tonight, 11 p.m., this will be very much worth staying up late for tonight. Arizona and Alabama. Arizona is a 7.5-point favorite. The total of this one, 175.5. About as high as you'll see a college over-under get to. KenPom has this one, 91.85 in favor of Arizona. So pretty close on the spread there. And I guess that's a total of 176. Another semi-home. You got to love where college basketball is now. Like, no longer is it just home and road games. Obviously, neutral court games have become very popular. But now we even go to these semi-home, semi-away matchups. So this is a Arizona game being played in Phoenix. So essentially a home atmosphere for the Wildcats. It's certainly home compared to coming from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. But earlier I talked about like having some things as a gambler to hang your hat on, having a little bit of a credo. Well, certainly, um, you know, part of my credo and a lot of things like, don't bet against Patrick Mahomes. Um, don't bet against like if it was Tom Brady and the Patriots, you don't bet against Tom Brady and the Patriots, whatever it may be. Um, I don't like betting on Alabama basketball because it's just it's so reliant on their style of play and the 3-point shot. Like that Nate Oates is going to have a great offense, but then there's going to be days where they're not making enough shots, or um, they're going to struggle so much on the defensive end where they also give up 100. And so far this season, the offense has been elite. Via KenPom, they're number one in the country. They're shooting 39.1% from 3-point range on insane volume. So that lends itself to wanting to take them in games like this because yes, like uh, unlike some underdogs, again, Bama's a 7.5-point underdog in this one. There's some teams where Arizona's going to grind you out. They're going to score so much that they can't keep up. And I would absolutely lay the points and take Arizona against teams that play a more quote unquote normal style, for lack of a better term. But like there's a scenario where Alabama wins this game like 104-90, and like they could kind of run away with it because they might make 17 threes. And I don't want to be involved necessarily in a game like that. Honestly, the over is a little intriguing just because both of these teams could score 90, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised. But again, I just never bet on Alabama basketball. Not something I do. I do think that Arizona is legit. I really like this team, but you're in a situation where both of these teams are coming off of losses. Arizona just suffered their first loss of the season. Another, I was just making fun of the semi-home, semi-away. I look, they list the Arizona game on Kim was semi-away because they played Purdue at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. But Alabama's actually lost 2 straight, 3 out of 4, coming off of losses to also Purdue and Creighton. But both those games were very close and very, very high scoring. They have not scored less than 77 points this season. Zona hasn't gone under 74 points this season. So you certainly know this is going to be high scoring, going to be very fun to watch. Like I said, if you're not a night owl, still this one shouldn't have any issues keeping you up. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for the 11 o'clock tip off. I would lean Arizona. Gosh, I'm talking myself into Alabama, honestly. Like 7.5 points is a lot, man. Like, aren't they going to make enough threes? Aren't they going to score enough to keep this one close? But again, I'm not a Nate Oates guy. I don't love their style of play. I think it's a little fluky. I'm not clearly I don't have a great feel for the side on this one because I'm kind of going back and forth just even as I talk about it. But we've talked about a lot of different games here. As I said, there's a ton of fun games. I mean, Duke, Baylor, St. John Xavier, Big East matchup, Seton Hall, UConn, Big East matchup, a mid-major matchup between Toledo and Vermont, another Big East matchup, Creighton and Villanova, Oklahoma, UNC tonight, Arizona, Alabama tonight. A lot of great basketball to watch. To get coverage of all of it, make sure you're following me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR. If there's no other games to discuss here in the chat, let's recap my picks for tonight. As I said, I did lock in the over 153.5 for the Duke Baylor matchup. I'm also on Norfolk State. Norfolk State is plus 6.5 at UTEP this evening. I don't think UTEP's very good. I think they're one of the worst offensive teams that I've seen in the country this season, and the metrics certainly back that up. You get this, that UTEP is shooting 24.2% from 3-point range. Like, that is putridly bad. They're a team that relies a lot on getting to the free throw line, but they're only 64.5% from the free throw line. This Norfolk State team is certainly not good defensively, but they always control the pace. They're going to play slow, and I think that them being one of the best free throw shooting teams in the country, you could see this one late coming down to a free throw battle, and Norfolk State's going to win that battle 10 times out of 10. I think that they're honestly the better team. Would not surprise me if they go on the road and win this one outright against the Miners. So I'm taking Norfolk State plus 6.5. Then I also have the under 137.5 in the Cal State Fullerton Pacific game. Honestly, this one, I think could go way under, folks. This is another KenPom test one. I had this one in more the low 130s. KenPom has it at 135. that means I'm locking in that under 137.5. Two of the slowest teams in college basketball. Two teams. Pacific plays faster, but they're so bad metrically offensively. 350th in KenPom. They're shooting under 30% from 3-point range. They're under 50% from 2-point range. They're barely over 60% from the free throw line. Like, yeah, they might get up and down a little bit more, certainly than Cal State Fullerton will, but it results in bad shots. So you're not going to see Pacific score a ton of points. They're coming off of playing an NAIA team and only scoring 68. The last time they haven't been over 70 since November 24th. Looking back, Cal State Fullerton. I mean, heck, they have recent wins. I mean, here are Cal State Fullerton's last 3 Division I wins: 64-54 against North Dakota, 60-55 against Pepperdine, 62-60 against Sacramento State. Tell me you don't feel pretty good about taking the under 137.5 there in that game. So again, to recap, over 153.5 for Duke Baylor, Norfolk State plus 6.5, and the under 137.5 in Cal State Fullerton Pacific are the 3 official plays for All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey. Obviously, thank you all so much for tuning in today. If you're watching this a little bit in the future, thank you for watching as well. Please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, leave a comment, share it with your friends. Follow me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR, and then also find the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show on Spotify or wherever you do listen to your podcast episodes. I'll be back on Friday morning to talk about how things turned out tonight and the weekend ahead there as well. So thank you all for tuning in to All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey.